All right, ladies and gentlemen. Wait, you may not be on yet. Here we go. Wait for that little thing to stop spinning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to round two of this. Big shouts out to my homie who told me he couldn't hear anything. Uh, yeah, so ironically enough, we're reading As a Man Thinketh. I'm Demarcus. I'm reading Here's Your Bedtime Story. And today is actually the effect of thought on circumstances. So it's really interesting that I just had a little circumstances, and my thought was to not do this video, but then I realized I had to. It's when adversity arises, what do you do? The man's character shows up when adversity arises. Who you have been bred to be shows up when something goes wrong. Do you pout? Do you get sad? Do you get upset? Do you quit? Do you run? Do you become afraid? All these different things are an option. But it is, in all reality, it's actually, it's your choice. The circumstances just brings to light what's been there the whole time. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So anyways, I appreciate you guys being here. We're going after it. The effect of thought on circumstances. Right now, Corona is a circumstance. And the thoughts that we have are going to affect how we get out of this or get in this. And so just keep that in mind as you hear this today, that, you always can choose a different path. It's like being in it's like being blocked in traffic. When you're blocked in traffic, you have no choice but to go at the speed that traffic wants you to go and in the direction that traffic wants to go without causing any harm to yourself or others. But as soon as traffic opens up, you have the choice to get off the exit. For those of you who are religious, in Psalms, they talk about making me, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That whole passage itself talks about the Lord. One of the parts of it is the Lord making me lie down in green pastures. And the reason that's such a big deal is because it doesn't say I lie down on my own, nor does it say, that I just know to lie down or I just do it. It says he maketh me, meaning that he knows when we need to sit down and stop. Right now is your time to sit down and stop, ladies and gentlemen. Now is your time to invest, to figure out what you want for the future. It's an option. You get to choose from here on out what you want it to be. So, but it's your effect that is a thought on circumstance. You're gonna see that here. Trust me, I've read half of this already. You're gonna love it. All right, here we go. And I'll read this first part twice because I read it twice the other time. It's just that good. So it says, man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are placed into it, then the abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. So the reason I'm going to read that twice is because I want you to think about a garden or think about some kind of field somewhere, and you just see a whole bunch of random plants and random weeds just growing out. The reason for it is because nobody took time to cultivate that land. And because nobody cultivate that land, all the seeds that have just been blowing in the air, they land there and they plant and they grow. The ground is designed to give you exactly what you plant. So if you're not planting anything and you're not doing any intelligent cultivation, then anything can burrow and anything can grow. So like I said before, you got to be very careful about what you're putting into your mind, because your mind will give you back what you plant, no matter what it is. Most people don't plant anything, so they get back useless weed seeds. So I'm going to read this to you one more time. Man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. Just as the gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing flowers and fruits where he requires, so may a man tend the garden of his mind, weeding out all the wrong and useless and impure thoughts and cultivating towards perfection the flowers and fruits of right, useful, and pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with ever increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of his character, circumstances, and destiny. Thoughts and characters are one, and as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstances, the outer condition of a person's life will always be found harmonious related to his inner state. Let me read that one more time. That's big. The outer conditions of a person's life will always be found harmonious related to his inner state. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, we often blame things that are outside of us. Her fault, his fault, their fault, job's fault, boss fault, kid's fault, the traffic's fault. Anything other than yourself is what you blame. The problem is that the harmony is inside of you. So what I want you to keep in mind is that, when we're going around blaming everybody else, you need to keep in mind that it's related to what's going on in you. And so how you're reacting and how you're showing up in every circumstance and environment is based on what you're gardening inside of yourself. Pretty big, right? So this does not mean that a man's circumstances at any given time are an indication of his entire character, but that those circumstances are so intimately connected with some vital element within himself for the time being that they are indispensable to his development. Every man is where he is by law of his being. The thoughts which he has built upon and into his character have brought him here. And in the arrangement of his life, there is no element of chance, but all is the result of a law which cannot err. This is just as true as to those who feel out of harmony with their surroundings as those who are connected with them. As a progressive and evolving being, man is where he is that he may learn, that he may grow. And as he learns the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contains for him, it passes away and gives place to other circumstances. Man is buffeted by circumstance as long as he believes himself to be the creature of outside conditions, but when he realizes that he is a creative power and that he may command the hidden soil and seeds of his being out of which circumstances grow, then he becomes the rightful master of himself. Don't let your situations dictate who you're going to become. They're just going to show you who you are. So change the inside, you change it all. That circumstances grow out of every thought, every man knows who has for any length of time practiced himself control and self-purification, for he will have noticed that the alteration in his circumstances has been exact ratio with his altered mental condition. So true is this, that when a man honestly and earnestly applies himself to remedy the defects in his character and makes swift and marked progress, he passes rapidly through a succession of vicissitudes. The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. It reaches the highest heights of cherished aspirations. It falls to the level of unchastised desires, and circumstances are the means by which the soul receives its own. Every thought-sown seed, or allowed to fall into the mind and take root there, produces its own, blossoming sooner or later into act, and bearing its own fruitage of opportunity and circumstance. Good thoughts bear good fruit. Bad thoughts bear bad fruit. Good thoughts bear good fruit. Bad thoughts bear bad fruit. Okay. Thank you, Josh. By the way, Josh is the one who told me, man. Oh my gosh, Josh, thank you so much for letting me know about the sound. Your intent in my circumstance, astronomical. I appreciate you, brother. Way to plant that seed. The outer world of circumstance shapes itself to the inner world of thought, and both pleasant and unpleasant external factors and conditions are factors, which makes for the ultimate good of an individual. As the reaper of his own harvest, man learns both by suffering and bliss, following the innermost desires, aspirations, thoughts by which he allows himself to be dominated, pursuing the will-o-wisp of impure imaginings, and steadfastly walking the highway of strong and high endeavor. A man at last arrives at their fruition and fulfillment in the outer conditions of his life. The laws of growth and adjustment everywhere obtains. A man does not come to the almshouse or the jail by the tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires. Nor does a pure-minded man fall suddenly into crime by stress of any mere external force. The criminal thought has long been secretly fostered in the heart, and the hour of opportunity reveals itself gathered power. Circumstance does not make the man, it reveals him to himself. Let me say that again. Circumstance does not make the man, it reveals him to himself. No condition can exist as descending into vice and its attending sufferings apart from vicious inclinations, or ascending into virtue and its pure happiness without the continued cultivation of virtuous aspirations. And man, therefore, as the Lord and master of his thought, is the maker of himself, the shaper and author of environment. Even at birth, the soul comes to its own through every step of its earthly pilgrimage. It attracts those combinations of conditions which reveal itself, which are reflections of its own purity and impurity, its strength and weaknesses. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Let me say that again. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Their whims, fancies, and ambitions are thwarted at every step, but their inner thoughts and desires are fed with their own food, be it foul or clean. The divinity that shapes our ends in ourselves, it is our very self. Only himself manacles man. Thought and actions are goers of fate. They imprison being base. They are also angels of freedom. They liberate being noble. Not what he wishes and prays for does a man get, but what he justly earns. His wishes and prayers are only gratified and answered when they harmonize with the thoughts and action, or with his thoughts and actions. In the light of this truth, what then is the meaning of fighting against circumstance? It means that the man is continuously revolting against an effect without, while all the time he is nourishing and preserving its cause in his heart. That cause may take form of a conscious vice or an unconscious weakness, but whatever it is, it stubbornly retards the effort of its possessor and calls aloud for a remedy. Men are anxious to improve their circumstance, but are unwilling to improve themselves. Men are anxious to improve their circumstance, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. The man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish the object in which his heart is set. This is as true of earthly as it is heavenly being or heavenly things. Even the man whose sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish his object. And how much more so who would realize a strong and well-poised life? Here is a man who is wretchedly poor. He is extremely anxious that his surroundings and his home comfort should be improved, yet all the time he shrinks his work and considers he is justified in trying to deceive his employer on the ground of insufficient wages. Such a man does not understand the simple rudiments of those principles that are based in true prosperity, and it is not only truly unfit to rise out of this wretchedness, but is actually attracting himself to a still deeper wretchedness by dwelling in and acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. Here is a rich man who is the victim of painful and persistent disease as a result of gluttony. He is willing to give large sums of money to get rid of it, but he is not willing to sacrifice his gluttonous desires. Wow. So he's saying that they're willing to give the money to get rid of the fat, but they're not willing to do the work to get rid of the fat. That's huge. He wants to gratify his taste for rich and unnational vivans and have his health as well. Such a man is totally unfit to have health because he has not yet learned the first principle of a healthy life. Here is an employer of labor who adopts crooked measures to avoid paying the regulation wage and is in hope of making larger profits, reduces the wage of his work people. Such a man is altogether unfit for prosperity, and when he finds himself bankrupt, both as regard of reputation and riches, he blames circumstances, not knowing that he is the sole author of his condition. I have introduced these three cases merely as an illustrative of truth that a man is the causer though nearly always is subconsciously, of his circumstance, and that whilst aiming at good end, he is continuously frustrating its accomplishment by encouraging thoughts and desires which cannot possibly harmonize with that end. Such cases should be multiplied and varied almost indefinitely, but this is not necessary, as the reader can, if he so resolves, trace the actions of the laws of thought in his own mind and life until it is done. Mere external facts cannot serve as ground of reasoning. Circumstances, however, are so complicated, thought is so deeply rooted, and the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals that a man's entire soul condition, although it may be known to himself, cannot be judged by another from an external aspect of his life alone. A man must be honest with certain directions, yet suffer privations. A man must be dishonest in certain directions, yet acquire wealth. But the conclusion usually formed that the man falls because of his particular honesty, and that the other prospers because of his particular dishonesty is the result of superficial judgment, which assumes that the dishonest man is almost totally corrupt and the honest man is almost entirely virtuous. In light of a deeper knowledge and a wider experience, such judgment is found to be erroneous. The dishonest man may have some admirable values and virtues which the other does not possess, and the honest man has vices which are absent in the other. The honest man reaps the good results of his honest thoughts and acts. He also brings upon himself the suffering which his vices produce. The dishonest man likewise garners himself the suffering and the happiness. It is the pleasing of human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtue, but not until a man has that's a word. Let's see, every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his mind. I guess he'd gotten rid of every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his mind and washed every sinful stain from his soul. Can he be in a position to know and declare that his sufferings are the result of his good and not of his bad qualities? And on the way to, yet long before he has reached the supreme perfection, he will have found workings in his mind and life. The great law which absolutely just and which cannot therefore give good for evil, evil for good. Possessed of such knowledge, he will then know, looking back upon his past ignorances and blindness, that his life and always was just ordered, and all that his past experiences, good and bad, were the equitable outworking of his evolving yet unevolved self. Good thoughts and actions can never produce bad results. Bad thoughts and actions can never produce good results. This is but saying that nothing can come from corn but corn, nothing from nettles but nettles. I love that statement. Nothing can come from corn but corn, nothing can come from nettles but nettles. Men understand this law in the natural world and work with it, but few understand its mental and moral world, though its operation there is still simple and undeviating, and they, therefore, do not cooperate with it. Suffering is always the effect of wrong thought in some direction. It is an indication that the individual is out of harmony with himself, with the law of his being. The sole purpose and supreme use of suffering is to purify, to burn out all that is useless and impure. Suffering ceases for him who is pure. There can be no object in burning gold that the dross has not removed, and perfectly pure and enlightened being could not suffer. The circumstances which man encounters with suffering are the result of his own mental harmony. The circumstances which man has encountered with blessedness are a result of his own mental harmony. Blessedness, not material possessions, is the measure of right thought. Wretchedness, not lack of material possession, is the measure of wrong thought. A man may be cursed and rich, he may be blessed and poor. Blessedness and rich are not only joined together when riches are rightly and wisely used, and the poor man only descends into wretchedness when he regards his lot as a burden and unjustly imposed. Indulgence are extremes of wretchedness. They are both equally unnatural and the result of mental disorder. A man is not rightly conditioned until he is a happy, healthy, prosperous being, and happiness, health, and prosperity are the result of a harmonious adjustment of the inner with the outer, of the man with his surroundings. A man only begins to be a man when he ceases to whine and revile and commences to search for the hidden justice which regulates his life. As he adapts his mind to that regulating factor, he ceases to accuse others as a cause of his condition and builds himself up in strong and noble thoughts. Ceases to kick against circumstances, but begins to use them as he aids to more rapid progress and as a means of discovering the hidden powers and possibilities within himself. Law, not confusion, is the dominating principle of the universe. Justice, not injustice, is the soul and substance of life. Righteousness, not corruption, is the molding and moving force in the spiritual government of the world. This being so, man has but to right himself to find that the universe is right. And during the process of putting himself right, he will find that he alters his thoughts towards things and other people. Things and other people will alter towards him. The proof of this truth is in every person, and it therefore admits of easy investigation by systematic introspection and self-analysis. Let a man radically alter his thoughts, and he will be astonished at the rate of transportation. Let's see. Oh, sorry. I looked at something else. Sorry, let me go back to this. Here we go. Let a man radically alter his thoughts, and he will be astonished at the rapid transformation it will affect in the material conditions of his life. Men imagine that thoughts can be kept secrets, but it cannot. And it rapidly crystallizes into habit, and habit solidifies into circumstance. Okay, so basically they're saying right here that what you think and the thoughts that you want to keep by yourself, you can't keep them secret because they're going to turn into a habit. And then that habit's going to turn into a circumstance which you're going to have to deal with. So bestial thoughts crystallize into habits of drunkenness and sensuality, which solidify into circumstances of destitution and disease. And pure thoughts of every kind crystallize into enervating and confusing habits, which solidify into distracting and adverse circumstances. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and indecision crystallize into weak, unmanly, and unresolute habits, which solidify in the circumstances of failure, indignance, and slavish dependence. Lazy thoughts crystallize into habits of uncleanliness and dishonesty, which solidify in the circumstances of foulness and beggary. Hateful and condemnatory thoughts crystallize in the habits of accusation and violence, which solidify in the circumstances of injury and persecution. Selfish thoughts of all kinds crystallize in the habits of self-seeking, which solidify into circumstances more or less distressing. On the other hand, beautiful thoughts of all kinds crystallize in the habits of grace, kindliness, which solidify into genial and sunny circumstances. Pure thoughts crystallize in the habits of temperance and self-control, which solidify into circumstances of repose and peace. Thoughts of courage, self-reliance, and decision crystallize in the manly habits, which solidify into circumstances of success, plenty, and freedom. Energetic thoughts crystallize in the habits of cleanliness and industry, which solidify into circumstances of pleasantness, gentle and forgiving Gentle and forgiving thoughts crystallize into habits of gentleness, which solidify into protective and preservative circumstances. Loving and unselfish thoughts crystallize into habits of self-forgetfulness for others, which solidifies in the circumstances of pure and sure abiding prosperity and true riches. A particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce its results on the character and circumstance. A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts. So indirectly, yet surely, shape his circumstances. Nature helps every man to the gratification of his thoughts, which he most encourages, and opportunities are presented which will most speedily bring to the surface both good and evil thoughts. Let a man cease from his sinful thoughts, and all the world will soften towards him, and be ready to help him. Let a man put away his weakly and sickly thoughts, and lo, opportunities will spring forth upon every hand to aid his strong resolves. Let a man encourage good thoughts, and no hard fate shall bind him down to wretchedness and shame. The world is your kaleidoscope, and the varying combinations of colors at which every succeeding moment it presents to you are exquisitely adjusted pictures of your ever-moving thoughts. So, let's see, here we go. So you will be what you will be. Let failure find its false content in that poor word environment, but spirit scorns and it is free. It masters time, it conquers space, it cows the boastful trickster's chance, and bides the tyrant circumstance uncrown and fill a servant's place. The human will, that force unseen, the offspring of a deadless soul, can hew a way to any goal, though walls of granite intervene. But be not impatient in delays, but wait as one who understands. When spirit rises and commands, the gods are ready to obey. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a very long and awesome chapter about As a Man Thinketh. So not As a Man Thinketh. Yeah, As a Man Thinketh, but it's on the effect of thought on circumstances. So ladies and gentlemen, all I want you to do is think about this. Whatever you think, those thoughts that go through your head every day, those feelings, you have a choice to keep them or let them go. And you have a choice to change them and cultivate and grow better thoughts. Because as long as you have those negative thoughts and those evil thoughts and those bad thoughts that you are keeping in your mind, they will eventually create the habits that will drive away all the good things that need to be yours and are meant to be yours. So ladies and gentlemen, think the good thoughts. Take chances out there with thinking positivity, doing positivity, and really growing yourself. And as it said at the beginning of this thing, ladies and gentlemen, let's see here. Nope, that's not the one I want. Circumstance does not make the man, it just reveals him to himself. So ladies and gentlemen, what I want you to think about now is what kind of circumstances are you currently in? And if that's the case, all you're doing is revealing yourself of how you're going to act. So take a chance and see, do a little bit of self-reflection on the inside and see why it keeps coming up. And you'll find out that you are actually the one who is designing that circumstance. So that means you're also the one who can change it. That's all I have for you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for staying with me at this book. I appreciate it. I hope I read a little bit better today. And tomorrow we will be reading, this is going to be nice. Effect of Thought on Health and the Body. I wonder what that has to do with anything. Go figure. And it's a nice short chapter, so we might read 2. But it's like maybe 1 or 2 pages, so we're good to go. But have a blessed night, ladies and gentlemen. Good night. And remember, I believe and I love each and every one of you, and I hope to talk to you soon. Once again, Josh, you're a lifesaver. Thank you for not letting me get 30 minutes into this video and then realizing I didn't say anything to anybody. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope you learned something from this and got something from this. Once again, the book we are reading is As a Man Thinketh, and I hope you take something great to bed with you. Remember, a man is not destined to, a circumstance only reveals to you who you are. So just remember, you can be better at any point in time, but it's a choice, and it must be made only by you. Have a blessed night, guys. Bye.